Go on, say the word. Buckle.
No. No. Well, yeah.
Welcome to episode 1 of the Jonathan Creek podcast. What are the chances, Ian, of this podcast buckling?
Gerry, I would say slim.
Okay, fair enough. How are you?
I'm not too bad. How are you?
Brilliant. I am looking forward to this so much. Although we are starting with a bit of a doozy. This will be a 2-hour recording, I reckon.
At least. I've been here since 6 a.m.
And like Christmas morning.
That's it. So excited. I've been able to sit down.
Yeah, it should be good fun.
It's been a while since we started something.
It has been a while. The first episode is always, there's a little bit of anticipation, a little bit of nerves. Will it work? Can we make it work?
Is there an audience for this?
Will anyone listen? Will anyone download? Are we talking to ourselves?
I suspect there will be people listening.
I hope so.
And some of them might not know who we are, so we should maybe explain a little.
Well, I'm Gerry.
And I'm Iain.
Yeah. You should have listened to the introductory episode 00.
Yes, that was very informative and it told you everything you need to know.
Not quite. I think we missed out a little bit.
Bits and pieces.
One of the most important things we missed out was the fact that it is the 20th anniversary of Jonathan Creek. And in fact, the day this episode drops will be the 20th anniversary to the day.
10th of May.
Yep. We better get it out now on the 10th of May.
We'll have to. 1997. Obviously, the show appeared.
Yeah. So 20 years doesn't, in some ways it doesn't seem like 20 years, although...
In others it really does.
It really does, yeah. If you can remember back to where you were, what you were doing 20 years ago. No, let's not do that.
What were you doing in your mid-20s?
Well, yeah, I was 20 at that point.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's a while ago.
While ago, yeah. All sorts of shenanigans.
I was only 15. I was studying hard and being very...
studious.
Regimented.
Anyway, enough of that. Enough of us. We've got a jam-packed episode.
It's literally bursting at the gunnels.
With jam. Oh, I need to pull you up on something.
You need to pull me up on something?
Yeah. You let it slip that you have been watching or listening to the DVD commentaries.
Well, yes, there was one for this episode.
We had a discussion.
We did.
And we mentioned it in the pilot episode last week.
We did.
I suggested that Jonathan Creek was very similar, perhaps even based on Columbo.
You did.
And you think he's more of a Sherlock Holmes character.
Yeah, I think I explained in episode 0 where that distinction came in for me.
Okay. And you told me, you admitted that during the commentary, the creator, the writer, David Renwick, no less, what did he say?
Well, he was asked by the director, Marcus Mortimer, how he came to be doing this. And he talked about being on location, doing One Foot in the Grave, which was one of his previous shows, and just discussing the idea of doing a British Columbo. Well, I still stand by the fact that the character turns out to be Sherlock Holmesy.
Oh, it does. I'm not saying there's no similarities, but I have to, hand on heart, never listen to the commentaries, all off my own back. I've not been cheating. Anyway, anything you want to say before we progress with this week's episode?
Well, I suppose we should let people know how they can interact with us. If they enjoy this, if they want to talk to us, if they want to talk about this episode of Jonathan Creek, the best place to go is jonathancreekpodcast.com, where every week it's going to be every other week, we're going to put a post up for the episode where you can discuss either the podcast or the episode of the show or both with other listeners. Hopefully plenty of you will join in with that. We found on our previous show that was very successful. If you want to talk to us on social media, we're at Creek Podcast on both Twitter and Facebook, so we'll be about. Now,
how shall we begin each podcast episode?
Well, I think it makes sense. I quite like doing it. It makes sense for us to summarise a bit of the story.
A summary?
Some kind of summary, yes.
Okay. Do you have one prepared?
I do.
Then crack on.
Jonathan Creek debuts with The Wrestler's Tomb. It's a classic murder mystery whodunit with some interesting original elements. We meet our eponymous hero, a magician's creative consultant, and his soon-to-be investigative partner, Maddie Magellan. a campaigning writer who tries to fight injustices in the legal system. When popular local artist Headley Shale is shot and killed during an apparent robbery, Magellan's suspicions focus on his scorned wife Serena. Enlisting Creek's help for the benefit of his lateral thinking, she endeavours to prove the widow is to blame. But will the solution prove so simple, or is there another mystery to uncover?
A model summary. I've got a feeling I've used that line before.
Oh, who knows?
We begin with the theme tune and short white on black credits, followed by a gothic-looking title card.
Yes, during the commentary, as you mentioned, I listened to the commentary, the creator, David Rennick, discusses how they came to choose this theme tune.
How did they?
Well, fans of the show will already know that season 2 begins with an episode called Dance Macabre, and that's obviously the name of this song. And he says, tune,
piece of music,
whatever. He explains that by the time they came to put season 1 together, he was already writing season 2, so the idea was in his head, and it literally came from that connection.
Okay. We begin this week at a gallery, and we hear an artist, Headley Shale, witter on about his nude paintings to a reporter.
Yeah, the exhibition's called Seductio ad Absurdum. It's nudes with clowns' faces, I think, or at least the ones that we see are.
As he mingles, he's approached by a young, glamorous-looking blonde, and it's obvious that they're pretending not to know each other, as a more age-appropriate woman suspiciously and perhaps knowingly looks on.
Yeah, she's not very impressed. That's his wife, isn't it?
We come to learn that she pushes between them and reminds him that the blonde had previously modelled for him and that he is too transparent in his attempt to fool her.
Yes, I don't think she is going to just sit by and let this sort of thing go on right in front of her.
No, the dynamics of this relationship are presented immediately. So he's obviously someone who, this is not the first time, and perhaps it's a relationship now of convenience.
Who knows? We don't quite get that level of detail, but he certainly has a wandering eye, if not more.
Over to Shale's home. The score is foreboding, and the large house is named the Wrestler's Tomb.
Yeah, the commentary gives a bit of information about the house. Apparently it was designed by the same person who did the pagoda at Kew Gardens, which people who live in that area might know, maybe some people have visited. And the name, the Wrestler's Tomb, comes from a painting by René Magritte, which is the Tomb of the Wrestlers.
Okay, it's a fairly intimidating building. And Serena, Shale's wife, appears in his studio as he thumbs the bum of a painting, the bottom of a painting, and claims that he hasn't had a live model in months.
Yeah, he's working from a photograph. His wife comes in with a helping of snark.
Yeah, she scornfully suggests that he must be losing his touch.
And then she leaves, and he just carries on working.
Well, he does it first, but then picks up the phone and orders someone to get round immediately and make him bark like a sea lion.
It's an interesting choice of words.
Yeah, takes all sorts. And we see Serena drive off in a bit of a mood, as witnessed by the postman.
Absolutely.
I presume that you recognised Headley Shale, Iain.
Of course.
Probably more so than me. He was played by Colin Baker. Born in 1943, he has been in Doctors, Hollyoaks, The Knock, Star Trek Continues. Is that one of these?
Some of these fan-made things, I think.
Okay. Roland Rat, The Brothers, War and Peace, and Roads to Freedom. However, he is most well known for playing Doctor Who between 1983 and 86. What can you tell me about that Doctor?
He was the second one, played by somebody called Baker.
Mm-hmm.
And he regenerated, I think, into Sylvester McCoy.
Yep, the sixth Doctor, apparently. And also, from what I can gather, the only Doctor to have been fired.
It's unfortunate. Although, did he maybe come back? I think he maybe made his peace, because I'm sure he maybe appeared in one of the more recent ones.
Sure. From Shale's home, we head over to Serena's office. So what does she do? She
is in some kind of senior position, I think possibly editor.
Maybe even owner editor.
At Eve magazine. The commentary reveals that at the time they did this there was no Eve magazine, but there since was one produced.
Okay.
And obviously they wouldn't have been able to get the rights to a name like that if it existed at the time.
So at Eve magazine, the seething Serena enters her inner office and tells her PA that she doesn't want disturbed.
That's right.
However, before she settles, the PA has to interrupt her firstly by intercom and then by entering her room to grab some files. And as she does, she sees Serena's legs and a puff of smoke coming from behind her chair.
She does. It's kind of suspicious, isn't it?
Yes, why?
You couldn't tell it's definitely her.
Precisely. The PA then receives a phone call.
Well, she does. There's someone on the line, I think one of the aspiring models connected with the magazine, a Danny something.
Danny, Davina, Davito, something.
Something along those lines.
From what we can gather, she's not going to get the job as a model.
It doesn't sound like it. While this is happening, we kind of get a cutaway scene back at Wrestler's Tomb, which is a POV shot of someone, a gloved person, entering the house through the back.
Yes, up the back stairs. We cut back to Serena's secretary, or PA, telling the caller that she's busy, and then we see a woman who we find out is the cleaner of the Shale house, talking to a local mechanic on the way up to the home.
Well, that exchange seems entirely created to explain that she's the cleaner.
Yeah, that's fine.
He says, "Oh, you're never a day away from that vacuum cleaner," or something along those lines. So it's a clever way to say this is the cleaner without something. Oh, it's the cleaner.
Yeah. Inside Shale's home, he hears some glass break or something fall upstairs and goes to investigate. And at this point, we see the cleaner enter the front door.
Yep, she lets herself in. She steps on some mail, and we get this sort of foreshadowing where the focus is put on the envelope, and she hears gunshots.
Well, firstly, she hears Shale ask what this is, so he's surprised.
Okay.
He shouts out, and then 2 shots, as you say, are fired.
Yeah.
I've got a little problem with the next part. She creeps up the stairs. Now, if you hear gunshots coming from upstairs in a house where it's not your house, you're the cleaner.
Yeah, we don't just leave.
I would be turning around on my heel and heading back.
Absolutely. It's interesting that they mention, again, this is another thing from the commentary track, they mentioned the issue they had with Shale and then the cleaner both going up the same set of stairs within a few seconds of one another. They didn't want to have the same shot.
Sure.
So you get her point of view when she goes up the stairs, which is interesting, sort of juxtaposed against the villain's point of view a wee bit earlier on.
What does she discover when she gets into the room?
Well, he's been shot dead and there's a girl tied up on the floor and the window's open.
We then have a bit of a jump scare.
A little bit. The mechanic that she spoke to earlier on puts his hand on her shoulder and she gets a bit of a fright.
Bit odd, isn't it? The mechanic.
Yeah, where's he come from?
Yeah, why is he following the cleaner?
Has he heard the shots? We presume he must have, but he seemed
Very quickly on the scene.
to be there, yeah, almost immediately. He unties the girl on the floor, who turns out to be the girl from the soiree earlier on.
Yes, the blonde.
Yes, Francesca.
Back over to Serena's office. It's just after 1 p.m. We see the PA leave while Serena's office door remains closed. She's obviously going on lunch.
Yeah. It's just a brief scene. We don't really see anything beyond that.
I think it's establishing that she's been there until this point.
Yes. And we jump back to the house and the police have arrived at
Yeah,
this
it's
point.
now the crime scene.
Very fortuitously, one of them happens to be just about standing on the jewellery that's on the lawn.
Yeah, a pouch of jewellery in the back garden. Before we hear Francesca, the blonde, describe her ordeal from this hooded person.
Yep.
She then lets out a scream as Shale is removed in a body bag.
Yeah, it's a bit melodramatic, isn't it?
I would also have thought that you would take the co-victim into another room before you zip up the body and move it out.
Yeah, it's a bit macabre, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not very sensitive.
No.
And we head back again to Serena's office, where the cops have now arrived with doubly bad news for her.
Were you aware that your husband had a lover? This French model, Francesca Boutron.
I can't take any of this in.
Well, this is how it was told to us. Miss Boutron arrived at your house around 9:15. She and your husband made love for 2 hours, rose and showered together, and then when she was in the bedroom getting ready to leave, he went downstairs to take a phone call. A man wearing a black hood got into the bedroom through the window, tied up Miss Boutron, and then went for your jewellery. Mr. Shale went up to investigate, and he was shot twice in the chest. The girl who comes round to clean for you, Katrina Topless, she arrived at that second, but by the time she and a neighbour had found the body, the killer had got away through the garden, dropping his spoils en route, it would seem. Now, you may know of an incident very similar to this. It happened a few weeks ago. A man in a black mask tied up the householders while he ransacked the house. However, in view of the circumstances here, Mrs. Shale, I have to ask the question. Where were you at the time all this happened? At 11:25 this morning.
That is some extraordinary police work there. As in, weird.
Why?
First of all, he's assuming that this woman's telling the truth and announcing it to the wife as fact. Your husband had a lover. These things, this is what she says happened. Secondly, it just seems weird that he's going through this whole story. He's just broken the news to her that this has happened. I don't know. It seems to me an odd approach.
What was odder was the 2-hour session. Did you see him? What age was he?
That probably includes the CDs and stuff to listen to.
It's impressive.
Well,
And also Katrina Topless.
is that a hint?
Yeah, I think it's part of the charm of Jonathan Creek. There is this quirky humour. Not so much black, but just odd.
Yeah. It's certainly odd.
Anyway, back to Serena. She appears to have a watertight alibi, although the cop does spot a red mark on her sleeve.
Yeah, she explains that that's oil paint, and that's the kind of thing that they're able to prove one way or the other fairly straightforwardly, I'd imagine.
Yeah, they appear satisfied with this response and leave, whilst she seems less than distraught.
That's exactly what I was thinking. She likes a cigarette, and yeah, this is
where it differs from Columbo, in that we know who the guilty party is, but throughout these episodes, like a traditional whodunit, we as the audience will be thrown red herrings left, right and centre.
Oh yeah, we're very much being led to believe that Serena killed her husband at this stage. You might say that's the end of the prologue to this episode.
Yeah. Serena Shale was played by Sheila Gish. She sadly died in 2005, aged just 62, from facial cancer, from which she lost an eye. At the time of her death, she was married to the Scottish actor Dennis Lawson. Now, you might be aware of him.
Yeah, well, he's Ewan McGregor's uncle, and he was in Star Wars.
The original Star Wars,
Yeah,
the original three.
X-Wing pilots.
Yeah. I know more from taking over in New Tricks.
Okay.
Sheila had previously been married to the actor Roland Curran and had 2 children. Lou herself was an actress. She was in Coupling and EastEnders, and sadly she died of cancer less than a year after her mother.
That's
Very
really
young.
quite sad.
Sheila herself appeared in Highlander, The Thin Blue Line, Brighton Bells, which was a British remake of The Golden Girls. Not great, to be honest. Tales of the Unexpected, and Anna Karenina. Karenina. Where do we go next?
Supermarket.
Yeah.
Quick save.
It's our first sighting of our hero. He is check-shirted and duffel-coated
Just the way we like him.
as he stands in a checkout queue, or checkout line as they might say in the States.
This is a bizarre encounter, is it not?
Describe it.
Well, there's a woman ahead of him buying, shopping, and he's obviously counting up her bill as the things are scanned, and he comes to a different total from the till. And when he mentions this, the difference is tiny. It's
A
like
few
pennies,
pence, yeah.
And despite this, and the fact that the shop or the till assistant very clearly says, "Sorry, we always get these sort of idiots now and then." The woman is impressed and wants this checked, rather than thinking this guy's weird. I need to get out of here very quickly.
Yeah, and he is, of course, correct. The manager comes out with a calculator. They tally up the receipt and find out that, yes, the system is wrong.
This establishes Jonathan Creek as a quick thinker and a smart man.
It does. I mean, I think it's a fairly smart way of doing it. It shows us, well, when I say smart way, it's not hugely realistic, but it does tell us a lot about him.
It does. Did you see what he was buying?
He was buying a Barbie doll.
And 2 cheddar cheese sandwiches.
Yeah, he looked quite embarrassed and a little bit sheepish.
Absolutely.
When that was spotted. Rightly so. Although,
You could have been a daughter or a niece.
yeah, if you're buying something for a kid's party.
Yeah, absolutely.
We make our first trip to Jonathan's house. Or when I say his house, his home. No, it's not a house.
Yeah, his windmill, which I understand is Shipley Mill, which is near Horsham.
I would love to live in a windmill. Not very practical.
With your clogs on.
Not so much clogs on. If I was a single man, in fact, when I first watched this as a 20-year-old, I thought, yeah, that's a life for me.
Think of the maintenance.
Yeah.
You'll never get a mortgage.
Yeah, you'd have to be left that in a...
I would think, yeah, well, like Jonathan.
We find that out later, yeah. He didn't purchase it.
No.
So we see him approach this fantastic structure, and then rather forlornly, before eating a nasty white sandwich, he saws the head off this Barbie doll.
Yeah, this leads to one of my favourite ever segues in recent televisual history.
Okay, what's that?
Well, he's doing a model of this trick. So it's a giant playing card with the Barbie doll inside of it, and he sticks a flaming rod through it, and as he does that, it skips to the live action version of the same thing, where the magician Adam Klaus is doing this to his assistant.
We're at the theatre, on stage, and we quickly discover why Jonathan was abusing this doll. He was doing it for this stage magician.
Yeah.
He's a very extravagant performer, and he finishes his act and thanks the audience of 2, sincerely.
Yeah, he's just practising his spontaneous finish. It's a good idea, actually. In his dressing room, he is the magician Klaus is brought to Jonathan by his security guards.
Yeah, he's manhandled by these 2 burly chaps who have not recognised him until... Is it Klaus or Klaus? How are you pronouncing this?
Klaus.
Klaus confirms to them who he is.
Jonathan points out that he enjoys being both strangled and sterilised at the same time.
They then discuss the act, and we find out more about the personality and characters of each person.
We do.
Klaus is easier to read. We get a visual representation of what he's into and how he likes to act.
Yeah, the writer describes him as a flamboyant, rather shallow showman.
Yes. He also sticks his hand down the shirt of a female, well, we think colleague, who obviously turns out to be more than a colleague.
Must be. He gives Jonathan a pass to avoid being accosted by security in future. Do you remember what that was?
A t-shirt?
Yes, with his face on it.
Jonathan leaves, and this female colleague, who has been molested by Klaus, jokes about Jonathan. The 2 of them do. It's quite nasty.
A bit cruel.
They ask if he's ever been with a woman, or if he's been with a woman since he's worked for Adam. And Klaus says he doesn't think he's ever been with a woman.
It's probably not true.
Probably not true at all. He does, however, admit that Jonathan has a brilliant analytical brain.
That's nice of him.
He appreciates Jonathan for his brain, as opposed to his body.
That's true, he definitely does.
Quick scene.
Did you think this was a reference to Lee Harvey Oswald, this scene?
Not thought about it like that before. I suppose it could be.
That was what struck me. It seemed very...
Did the commentary track mention it?
No.
You're just making that up then, aren't you?
I'm not making up. It struck me as the arrest in the cinema, maybe inspired by that. Ripping it off or anything, but inspired by that idea. Yeah, this scene was quite silly.
What happened?
Well, the police come in, they sit next to this fellow, they show him a card that says, "Are you," whatever his name was, Griswold?
Griswold, yeah.
And he nods, and they show him another card that says, "You're nicked."
Again, that's what I'm talking about. It's the quirky, odd humour.
Yeah.
Just a little touch here and there. I enjoy it. I think that's what makes it Jonathan Creek.
Now, you look at that and you think, the police would never do that. But you see some of the things that police forces are tweeting out and putting on Facebook these days.
Oh, I wouldn't put anything past the police these days.
Okay. Back at the police station.
This Griswold fellow, he denies any involvement in the Shale killing.
Yeah, I think he's a known housebreaker.
Yeah, he happily admits to other thefts and asks if the prints that were found on the gun were his, and the cops have to admit that the prints matched none of their records.
Yeah. It's a bit of a dead end at that stage.
Well, no, it's not, because he is still being arrested or charged.
The gun is a bit of a dead end.
Ah,
at this
right,
stage.
sure. But Griswold is still going to be charged with the crime. He does, however, insist on exercising his rights to what?
Well, speak to his representation, I guess.
No.
Oh, his phone call.
No,
What did he get his rights to?
an investigative journalist.
He doesn't have a right to an investigative
Yeah, you do.
journalist.
Of course, everyone does. Ian, look at the 9th Amendment in the British Constitution, which is unwritten.
The unwritten 9th Amendment.
Yeah, you'll find it there.
Okay. We go to what turns out to be Mary Magellan's home next.
Yes, and we see her on the phone trying to make headway with a senior police officer whilst her partner appears from another room wearing what?
He's got a full camera attached to him.
A
like
Steadicam.
Yeah,
Rig,
Steadicam.
yeah.
And he comes in and does the same thing to her that Klaus had done to the girl.
Yes, hand right down the shirt.
Yeah. Apparently the BBC got some letters and phone calls.
Why?
People thought that was inappropriate for the time it was shown.
Okay.
Points of View was steaming that week. Anne Robinson was raging.
Things don't appear to be great between Maddie and Trevor.
No, it's a bit awkward, isn't it? And it's not great for her on the phone either. First of all, when she tells the police she's trying to research bungled police prosecutions, they essentially end the call. And then she speaks to her publisher on the phone, and he tells her that 10,000 copies of her book have been returned in Australia. And she bemoans the fact they were printed on boomerangs.
Nice line. However, he does have some more positive news.
Well, it's a weird one because it's not really a publishing matter at all, but he has heard that this fellow that's been arrested in the Shale case
Griswold.
may well not be responsible, and points her in that direction.
Well, Griswold's been in touch with him,
Yes.
so there may be an opportunity to investigate a potential miscarriage of justice.
Yeah.
So Maddie heads over to the police station to hear out Griswold.
Can't you see what's happened here? Someone's used my MO, the mask, the black tape they tied her up with, as a cover to do this guy in. And we know who had the motive.
Mr. Shale's wife never left her office that morning. From what they're saying, there's no way on earth she could have got out without someone seeing.
She did it. I don't know how, but she went back to that house and shot her old man in cold blood. And she'll watch me go down for it unless someone like you can nail her.
That seems to point Maddie in the direction of a new investigation, though it's not a lot to be going on.
It's not, but from what we can gather, I don't think she has many other options.
Well, that's true. And she does seem the kind of person who might buy a conspiracy theory if one comes along.
From the cop shop, we go to Francesca's house and we see Maddie peering through the letterbox at her answering machine before we cut to Serena entering her office, being followed by the press pack.
She's being doorstepped by the media. Maddie's watching this on the television.
And she makes a short statement about the arrest of Griswold in relation to her husband's death. So back over to Maddie's place, and she watches this interview, as you mentioned, on the TV whilst doing what?
Yeah, I made a mistake earlier. This is where she gets groped. My mistake.
What does it matter? A groping here, a groping there.
Certainly, Trevor did it in the kitchen with the right hand.
With his Steadicam. Yeah, it'd be quite impressive actually, wearing the whole Steadicam rig to be groping at people.
Yeah. Anyway, yes, Maddie's trying to get information on...
No, she's drinking champagne in a mug.
She's drinking champagne in a mug and trying to get information on where she might get a word with Francesca Boudron.
She's casually breaking up with Trevor.
You think she is?
Oh, she says that, yeah, it's not working. And he says, and eats his toast. You know, he seems quite unconcerned.
Yeah, but they don't actually break up.
Well, no, you don't know that. They can
You
break
see them
up.
together later.
Yeah, doesn't mean to say they've not broken up and then got back together again.
Yeah, maybe.
And we don't really find out at this stage how strong a relationship this is. I mean, have they been together for 10 years? Is this a
Certainly
2 month
seems to be
thing?
living together anyway.
Yeah. Did you recognise Trevor?
Obviously. I can't see Alistair McGowan without picturing some of his more famous impressions, though.
One of his most famous was Jimmy Savile.
That's true.
So he is indeed Alistair McGowan, born in 1964, an impressionist and a comic, as well as an actor. Known for voicing many puppets in Spitting Image. He was also in Mayo, Bleak House, All Quiet on the Preston Front, Murder Most Horrid, and Fist of Fun.
For me, he doesn't fit in this. He's too recognisable as Alistair McGowan to be Trevor.
That's a bit of a slight, because his whole career is based on him not being recognisable. He portrays other people.
Yeah, I know. It's harsh, but it's just how I feel when I watch this.
Anyway, we've got something more sinister in this scene.
What was that?
Maddie indulges in a spot of phone hacking.
Yes, that may well have been charming at the time.
Yes, nowadays there is absolutely no way that your hero, one of your lead characters, would be a journalist who phone hacks victims' voicemails.
No.
Anyone in the UK will be aware of what we're talking about. We don't need to get into it in too much detail, but there was a massive phone hacking scandal of celebrities, of victims, still going on, yeah, by the press, and they were up to all sorts of nonsense and no goodery.
Yeah, and I think the most egregious case, there was a murder victim who got hacked, and it led the family to think that she was accessing her phone when she was missing.
The point being is that, as a whole, the country was fairly outraged by it, so it's not a trait that would be lead character worthy these days.
No, and I think it would be written differently now.
Certainly.
In any event, she discovers that Francesca will be at the theatre this evening.
Yes, meeting some people at the Adam Clowes performance. So that's where we head. Now, Jonathan looks on exasperated as Clowes overdoes his whip on stage.
Yeah, the production values for this were quite high, weren't they?
Very high.
I think it was commented on the DVD that they were never as high again for the magic. And in fact, I think Clowes' other scenes in season 1 were cut for budgetary reasons before they were even filmed.
Yeah, no expense was spared, that's for sure.
Not in episode 1, but that was it. The budget ran out at that stage. I think a comment that was made there, a magical consultant, a guy called Ali Bongo,
very famous here,
who remarked that there were very many magicians in the UK who would have killed for that production.
No doubt. From the balcony, Maddie spots Francesca in the stalls. Now, the illusion is a success, and during the interval, Clowes notices Francesca, who he describes as a heart attack on legs.
Like a sausage roll.
A pepperami.
He asks one of the team to get what later turns out to be a matching outfit. So I think what he's asked, or what he needs to do at that point, is identify someone in the audience who they can pair up with.
Jonathan recognises her as the model of the artist who was shot. And as you said, we hear Adam tell his PA to make sure that Francesca is involved later in the act.
It's in the interval, and Jonathan's gone to the bar and he meets Maddie.
Yes, it's quite a painful meeting. What happens?
It's not the most romantic of introductions, is it? He stabs her finger thinking it's a sausage.
With a cocktail stick.
He does. She hands him the sausage.
And moves off to force her way into a conversation with Francesca.
Yeah, she puts Francesca in a very awkward position, doesn't she?
How does she do that?
Well, she acts like they know one another, that they met at some kind of charity event, I think, which leads to the others in the group being sort of sympathetic and supportive towards Francesca. So she then can't say, oh no, I wouldn't do a charity event.
Yeah, and Maddie is pretending that she is a trauma counsellor and encourages her to meet up at a future date to discuss. I mean, that's, again...
It's all weird. And I'm not sure, is she trying to trick Francesca, or is she just trying to put her in a position where she can't say no?
Both.
So she wants Francesca to believe that this actually happened.
Yes, the whole point is that she wants Francesca to believe that she's a counsellor so that she can interview her and get information. Again, this is ridiculous journalism. It would totally unethical.
Yeah, I would say so.
And it wouldn't be written like that today.
Again, I would agree.
Back onto the stage in the second part, and the creepy Clowes brings Francesca onto the stage as part of his disappearing act that sees her end up at the back of the theatre.
That's right. She disappears down under the stage. Jonathan meets her there and takes her around to the back door, where she starts trying to ask him questions about the act.
Now, can you remember there was a joke he made about herpes?
Yes. He doesn't talk about Adam to potential and current girlfriends, because one time he told them he had a hairpiece and the girl tried to circumcise him with a tin opener.
So, She appears, she's meant to have been on stage, she does this act, and she takes a bow at the back of the room.
It goes well, yeah, the trick goes off flawlessly. I think one of the things we learn is that Jonathan does a good job preparing these tricks, because there's never really, in this episode anyway, any kind of errors or disasters, despite the fact that Klaus is portrayed as somewhat arrogant, and you would think prone to mistakes.
Afterwards, we hear Jonathan apparently refuse to take a gift across London to Francesca's home, a gift from Klaus, a thank you present. And that's where we head, her house. And Maddie is questioning her under this spurious guise as she clips her toenails and describes how she and Shale became lovers and what occurred during the murder.
Yeah, I think, although Maddie had this convoluted and terrible plan, it played into Francesca's need to get her story out.
Yeah, of course, but that doesn't excuse it in any way at all.
No, it doesn't excuse it, but that's why it's worked. It's because Francesca has this need to tell people this story. She was therefore willing to go along with it to a certain extent.
What is a little bit... There's something niggling here, without wanting to spoil the end of this podcast. From what we come to learn, why would she give information away for free to someone who's not paying for it?
Well, if it's a counsellor, they're not going to publish it.
Yeah,
but
she's
maybe thinking it's a chance to practice the story, make sure she's telling it correctly.
Okay, maybe, but a counsellor who you've just met at a bar?
Yeah.
And you think this information or this story is valuable?
Yeah, because you would think she comes across at the end as more cunning, a bit more savvy than she appears to be at this point.
Yeah. And remember, a counsellor's not, it's not like a doctor. It's a counsellor. Apparently,
she might not even be a counsellor.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's something that doesn't sit quite right. Anyway, she is distressed and breaks down before Maddie implies that perhaps the assailant could have been female.
Yes, because she's trying to hint that it was the wife.
Yes. Now, Francesca immediately assumes Maddie is suggesting that Serena is guilty and seems to agree before she starts to question how she knows so much about the case. It's starting to click with her that something's not right. And Madeline's saved by the bell.
Literally.
What happens?
Jonathan with this gift from Klaus.
He walks in and immediately notices her feet. It's quite prominent.
Another bit of foreshadowing there.
Mm-hmm. And she shows no inhibitions as she tries on the little black dress sent over by Klaus and doesn't take much persuasion to keep it.
No, that's true.
Or agree to have dinner with him that night.
I think she suggests it almost at that point.
Yeah. She at first says, I couldn't possibly keep this. And Jonathan says, yeah, okay, fine, I'll take it back. She says, no, okay, I will keep it.
After Jonathan leaves, Maddie makes comment about a magician being the sort of person she needs to speak to.
Mm-hmm.
And Francesca points out that Jonathan might be the right man to get hold of.
Yes, because he is the person who invents the magician's tricks.
And you can see that Maddie's intrigued.
There's a twinkle in her eye.
And we skip to her harassing Jonathan on the street.
He has already ID'd her as a journalist and certainly not a therapist.
That's right.
She defends herself as saying that she has a social conscience and wants to go to lunch with him to pick his brains.
He takes the opportunity to establish the parameters of their relationship.
How does he do that?
He asks if she's trying to get into bed with him, essentially.
She says that she has no interest in sleeping with him, anything that involves a zipper. And he claims that he had to ask because he's not very good at reading signals.
Which is not true.
No. We go into the restaurant, and over the food, they discuss the Shale case.
How do you know this Griswold didn't kill Shale?
Why would he? He'd just run for it. More importantly, professional burglars don't drop their loot leaving the scene of a crime. She did that so she could have it both ways. Forced the drawer to make it look like a robbery, then left the jewellery behind so it'd be given back to her later.
And her entire alibi rests on the fact she was seen going into her office at 9:30 and was still there when the police arrived at 1.
Which, unfortunately, is proving to be the one... What? What?
No, I just can't watch people eating raw onions, that's all. It gives me indigestion.
Oh, I'm sorry. For being such a gastronomic klutz, I like onion rings. Is that okay?
So where does she work, this Serena Shale.
God, what planet have you been on? She's editor-in-chief of Eve magazine, which is grounds for prosecution in itself. I don't know. How does it work? How do you get out of a room through a closed door without someone outside noticing?
What floor's the office on?
13th. No ledges or walkways outside. Plus the windows don't open in any case for safety reasons. Do a trick for me.
I beg your pardon?
Something from your repertoire.
I think you can tell that Jonathan is intrigued. His mind would naturally be interested in this type of puzzle.
He wants to solve it, yeah.
And he does perform a trick, but warns her that the solution to it would be mind-numbingly banal.
And she agrees when she finds out that it was indeed mind-numbingly banal.
That sort of reminds me of Sherlock Holmes. And people are hugely impressed when he seems to be able to predict and read the impossible from them. And then he explains how he's worked out certain things, like what their profession is, what they've been doing recently. And when he describes how he did it, they think, well, I could have done that myself. It always annoys him.
Definitely. I think when we see later on, when they go to the office, he's trying to figure out what's going on. I think if that were being filmed now, you might see a bit like in the Sherlock TV series. His thoughts demonstrated somehow in the screen, like graphics or text or something coming up to show the workings of his mind.
Sure. In any case, he agrees to help with the case, but he needs some info from Serena's office, and Maddie is confident that she can sort this out.
Yeah, and the next thing we know, they're there.
What is her solution?
She is shown up to interview Serena.
Yep, pretends to be from Channel 4, doing some sort of documentary on powerful women in the publishing industry, something like that.
Yeah, Jonathan's been strapped into the Steadicam.
Yes, he says he feels like he has been artificially inseminated with a supermarket trolley.
She tells him it's supposed to eliminate jerks.
How does he respond?
Well, he says that so does Clint Eastwood, but he doesn't want him strapped to his chest either.
So as Maddie talks and listens to Serena, Jonathan takes this video camera around the office in order to film the locations.
Films everything.
Yes, get an idea of the setup.
Were you impressed with the airbrushing?
Not really.
Were you surprised to learn that magazines do touch-up photographs?
No.
Maybe it would be more interesting in 1997.
I think so, yeah.
Jonathan goes through to where Joy is.
The PA, yeah.
Yeah, and we get a momentary cutaway, and he goes from wearing this Steadicam to having sat it down. But apparently that took a good 20 minutes for him to remove it.
Yeah, I can imagine it's not something you slip on and off. It's probably a three-man job.
Magic of television.
Joy and Jonathan seem to be getting on. She's quite happy to chat to him.
Yeah, and as he questions her, which is not something he goes on to do an awful lot, I don't think, he obviously feels like he's worked something out.
She confirms that she didn't leave her desk all morning or put any calls through, but did pop in to grab the file of Davina Yates.
Or Bates.
Now that's important, isn't it?
We'll find that out later on.
Jonathan and Maddie leave the office, and as they do, we can see that Jonathan appears to have worked something out.
Yeah, he's definitely got an idea.
He's got a little string to pull on. There's a little marble there rolling around.
Yes. Maddie has picked up a parking ticket while they're in, and she throws it in the back of her car with about 20 others. Did that remind you of anybody?
It certainly did. We won't mention them, but yes.
Jonathan then explains to Maddie that he has indeed figured out how Serena could escape.
But that he'll need a few hours to pull things together, and a lot of it will hinge on the call from Yates or Bates. He says the name makes a big difference, as apparently it could provide a means of Serena committing this murder.
And if this were a two-part episode, that was where you would end it.
Yes, certainly would be. Let's have a tea break.
And we're back.
Enjoy that?
Oh, I feel very refreshed.
Very refreshed. We head over to the windmill. This is Maddie's first time being there.
She is intrigued by this as well. She's a person who gets intrigued on a regular basis.
And we find out a little more about Jonathan's history, his family history.
Yeah, the windmill has been in the family for 5 generations, which in Scotland is about 10 years. So a little politics joke there.
And his parents have emigrated.
Yes, they live in Philadelphia, but they pop back to check if he's got a proper job yet from time to time. Did you spot his trainers in the washing machine?
Was it a tumble dryer?
I think it was the washing machine.
Okay, yeah. Wouldn't recommend that.
No, it's an unusual approach.
Did it as a kid, but I wouldn't put a pair of shoes or trainers. You're asking for them to be destroyed.
They only spend a brief moment in the sort of downstairs area of the windmill, and they head up to what I would say the sort of magic setup.
I think it's in this scene that Jonathan claims to know that Maddie is single.
Yes, I think. Did she ask? I can't remember exactly what it said, but...
How does he deduce it?
Well, he's basing it on the onion rings that she ate. Although, those were not onion rings.
Not what I would call onion rings. Onion rings are battered.
Yes, they were rings of onion.
Yeah.
But, an onion ring needs to be deep fried in batter. And I'm not saying that as a Scotsman, that is just what onion rings are.
I've also got a problem with that logic. I think to assume that someone is not in a relationship because of that. Now, fair enough if you are newlywed or newly seeing someone.
Maybe not newlywed. I think, if you're in a new relationship, you might make that effort.
Yeah, but these days now, I'd have no problem.
You get a whole tub of brie. And
then forcing my wife to smell my breath.
I'm glad you said smell my breath at the end of that sentence.
No, that doesn't prove anything.
No, I disagree with him. I agree with you. Not in that, but
okay.
Yes.
Let's move on. They go up to his living quarters up a floor, which are magically impressive.
They're set up like a shrine to the magicians of old.
Yeah, and he mentions that's his passion.
Yes, and you can see there's a picture. I think was it Houdini maybe?
He'll be there,
Dumbledore and all the famous magicians.
Some French ones, yeah.
Yeah. Victorian posters, and he says he was born 100 years too late.
Yeah, Maddie looks over an endless list of files on magic as well, so it's not just posters and books. He is curating this information.
He's a student of the genre, of whatever the field maybe.
Mm-hmm.
This brought back a lot of memories. I bet you kids these days don't have box files and binders.
No, do you?
I did when I was in the 90s.
Of what?
Schoolwork. And Star Trek magazines.
It's all iPads and Game Boys and Xboxes these days, isn't it?
I don't think you get Game Boys anymore. I think you're thinking back too far on that one as well.
Maddie spies a magic chair and wants to have a little shot.
Before she did that, did you spot that she put the binder back in the wrong place?
Yeah,
so he sorted it very meticulous.
Yep.
Yes, before she gets a golden chair though, he's got something else to show her.
What's that?
He's built a model of the office, the 2 rooms of the office, to show how Serena could have escaped using puppets.
Yeah. Very Doc Brown and even Sledgehammer.
Well, a sledgehammer is what sprung to mind for me. The episode Icebreaker that we covered in Sledgecast not that long ago was very similar. They built a model of the area they were going to secure.
If you looked at this, the detailing in this was fantastic. Even the magazines, he had little magazine covers
Really?
on the walls. Yeah, it was very, very intricate.
And it's nicely filmed as well, the model. You see it very clearly. It's not awkward. And you kind of cut between the model and a live action, almost reenactment of what he's saying could have happened.
So after dismissing the story as they have been told, they go through another scenario that involves a mobile phone, a microphone, and the file for Davina Yates. Can you explain what this theory is?
Yeah, Jonathan gets Mary to hold the joy puppet and then gives sort of an awkward reach around to get to the other side with Serena to act like she is hiding behind the sofa.
Mm-hmm.
And Joy takes the phone call, which Jonathan says could well be Serena with a mobile telephone hiding behind the sofa. I don't really think that's plausible. You would hear her in the room anyway. And if the name was Bates, Joy would still see the door, so Serena couldn't escape. So it must have been Yates, because then while Joy is down at the lower faraway cabinet, there is a moment of opportunity for Serena to slip out and down the fire escape.
Yeah, not really that plausible, is it?
No, and I think he rules it out.
Before that, Maddie again seems less than impressed with one of his solutions.
Very good.
You see, it's like the tissue. People beg me to explain something, it's the last thing they want to hear, because you're disproving a miracle. Houdini walked through a wall 2 bricklayers had built on stage. People swore he had the power to dematerialise. You find out he used a trapdoor under a carpet, it's too mundane, you feel cheated. But that's all magic is, it's an illusion, it doesn't make an illusion magic.
No.
Right. Thanks then.
You're welcome.
It's amazing, I suppose. To think she could have done all that to create an alibi.
But of course she didn't, did she?
What do you mean?
What, she's left her office empty for 3 hours with a pair of legs propped on the table? What if a PA puts through an urgent call or there's a fire drill or something, the whole thing's blown to bits? It's just a textbook explanation. Doesn't stand up for a minute in real life.
So, sorry, what are you saying?
The more I go over it, this bloke Shale, his life and work and everything, the more I think we're missing something obvious.
There's an irony there. Jonathan thinks that it's ridiculous that she would have went to all that trouble to put in place an alibi, yet at the same time he's went to all that trouble to disprove this alibi that he doesn't believe in the first place.
Yeah, he's created an impossible scenario and then said it's impossible. So that's nice.
Yeah. I think, again, it's developing his character. He's very fastidious. He's not slipshod, he's going to do everything to the best of his abilities.
Yeah, he likes to solve the puzzle.
Yeah, I think that's part of what, he enjoys it. Even disproving it is going some way to solving it. It's going some way to a solution. If you can disprove one theory, whatever's left.
If you eliminate the yes, etc. Like I say, it's like Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
We get a bit of a time jump.
Yes, we're still at the windmill a little later on. Maddie is on this magic levitating chair as they puzzle over some of the apparent inconsistencies.
Did you notice that they had a lot of light-coloured things draped around behind her?
No.
The director commented on the DVD that when they put her up on this thing, turned out her black trousers were invisible against the black background.
Okay.
So it ruined the effect.
Ah.
So they had to drape light-coloured sheets and clothes and things. And you'll see that if you look at the episode, so that you can make out her legs.
Interesting. What are some of the inconsistencies that they are pondering? If you can't remember, I'll tell you. It was the unmatched prints that were found in the gun.
Okay, well that makes sense. That's one that needs to be figured out. No matter what they think, if the prints don't belong to anybody, then somebody else was there.
Yes, but Francesca said that the killer wore gloves.
That's also interesting.
Yeah. And also, apparently they're confused by why the gun was left at the scene. Now, I've mentioned this before, I think, on the Columbo podcast. A good pro would leave the gun.
Yeah, you learn that for day one at assassin school.
If it's an unregistered, untraceable gun, you're only risking being caught if you take it with you.
Yeah.
So you commit the crime, drop the gun there and then.
Are we going to talk about the difficulty of obtaining an unregistered gun in the UK in 1997?
We will. Will we talk about it just now? No, we won't.
Save it.
We'll save it because it's related to who owned the gun or who used the gun.
Okay.
So they conclude that there must have been another person in the room before Jonathan puts his foot in it by asking Maddie to get off the chair.
Well, we heard that at the top of the show, did we not?
Yes.
She explains it's a good job that she has a positive self-image, and it doesn't actually seem to dent her confidence at all.
I think it's fair. In reality is, it's not because she's so heavy she might break a normal chair.
Yeah, it's a flimsy device.
It's a flimsy device not meant for sustained use. But yeah, I think this starts to highlight the chemistry between them, that he leans over to help her off this device and she falls. But the point is, there's a moment where they think, are they going to kiss? She looks at his lips, and I think it's just starting to build up that will they, won't they dynamic.
I think there's some initial trust between them as well. She's let him put her up on this device as much as she wanted to do it. He's sharing his family's history. He's told her that his parents are in America. They live in Philadelphia and they visit from time to time, and the windmills history and things like that. So,
a bond is being
created. There's a little bit of sharing between them.
She then mentions their next move. So she's already considering them a partnership.
A team.
Where does this next move take them?
The back garden of Wrestler's Tomb. Did you notice in this scene now that the voices were out of sync with the people speaking?
Yes.
There's a reason.
Why?
Because it's fake wind, and they had a wind machine that was very noisy, so you couldn't hear them speak when they filmed it. They had to lip sync later on, and it's very hard for extended speech.
Ah, nice. It's explained that the back garden to the Shale home is totally enclosed, and Serena would have to have climbed over things to get in there. Now, she's not the most athletic-looking woman.
Yeah, but it's her house, and familiarity can help with these sort of things.
Jonathan, in any case, is not interested in Maddie's theory. He wants to go in. I think he says, if we're here, let's just get this over and done with.
They go around the front door and they've dispensed with the wind machines, just somebody shaking the plant now.
The door is answered by Miss Topless, Katrina.
Yes.
The cleaner. And they give her the Channel 4 documentary line again before barging in and causing an important and perhaps expensive drawing by Salvador Dali to fall to the floor. I think there's a collection of
napkins and scraps with art. But
surely that would be encased.
You would think, if they cared about it, yes.
Picasso and Dali, not just encased, alarmed.
Yes, it's ridiculous. But it sets up a nice joke later on.
Later on it does.
Maddie makes her excuses to head up to the toilet, but she's going to snoop around the murder room.
She is indeed. Meanwhile, Katrina decides to call Serena at work.
Yes, to confirm that this is all kosher.
Jonathan is not very good at thinking on his feet here. He doesn't try and stop her in any way.
Well, I think you can see from his face he wants to try and stop her, but he can't think of anything to say.
But fortunately for them, it's engaged. She's busy.
Katrina gets a bit, I'm not sure suspicious, but worried about Maddie being upstairs so long.
And Jonathan has to knock over a table to distract her from going up to investigate. And in doing so, he sees what?
The envelope with the footprint from the day of the murder. And this upsets Katrina.
Yes, she says it's the little things that bring it all back. And this is a clue as well. I mean, the cleaner you would not expect to be so distraught.
Well, she did find the body, so it's possible.
Yeah, but I think it's hinting at what is to come.
Yeah. I think it's quite harsh that they've made her keep coming to clean the house after witnessing a murder as well.
She's crying and Jonathan offers her a hanky and she gives it a fair old squirt.
Yeah.
He's quite taken aback.
Meanwhile, Maddie's hunting through the wardrobes and hasn't really come up with anything.
No. As Jonathan comforts Katrina, her menacing-looking, jealous husband appears at the window.
What's he doing at the window?
Who knows? Spying on her.
Creep.
Yeah.
He looks very mad.
He enters and Jonathan probably doesn't handle it in the correct way. What does he say?
I can't remember exactly what he says.
He says, "There's nothing going on here. I was just giving her something to blow on." Not the best.
No, that's not ideal.
So the husband then proceeds to use a vacuum cleaner on Jonathan.
Yes, telling him to stay away from his wife.
Again, it's just a little bit odd and quirky, this type of humour. That's what makes the show the show.
I would have phoned the police if I was Jonathan.
You can't. You're snooping around a house pretending to be...
I let you in.
No, yeah, only because you lied to them. It's a crime scene, and you cannot hang about crime scenes. It looks suspicious as... Yeah, bad news.
Meanwhile, Maddie's upstairs and she's spotted blood on the rug and an elastic band, which she steals.
She does. She's taking things from crime scenes. She must know, or should know, that even if she finds, which actually turns out to be the case, if she finds something, we can get there, but if you remove it, you can't prove that it was there.
She seems like the sort that would eat a dead man's cheese.
Columbo agenda for murder?
Yes.
Dead man's cheese.
That's a very obscure reference, I apologise.
Maddie comes down the stairs just in time to save the day, or certainly save Jonathan from a potential beating.
She is faking a phone call, saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and all this. She says, "Oh, it was tomorrow I was meant to come." And they leave.
Yes. As they do, they have to jump into a bush because Serena is arriving back.
Yes. The director explains that the POV shot from inside the bush was put in because it looks creepy and it would be good for the trailer.
It does.
It doesn't really serve any purpose here because they're not seeing anything important.
No. What happens when she arrives back in the house?
She wonders where the Picasso napkin is gone. And we can fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they don't let us. They show us what happened.
It was a very good blow. An expensive blow.
Yeah, but I'm one of these folk that thinks these jokes would be better if you don't give us the punchline at the end.
Yes.
Anyway, in the car.
Maddie is convinced that Serena did it. She has no proof, she just knows. She's got one of those faces.
She's driving down the main road at 5 miles an hour. You see that? There's a cyclist goes zooming past them at one point.
Jonathan, she's playing with this elastic band and Jonathan asks where she got it from and she says it was upstairs.
It's very careless, isn't it?
And he starts to consider the letter that he saw that was in the doormat.
He's intrigued by this envelope, so he's got his own little line of thought.
And I think he's starting to put things together before realising that he should be somewhere else.
Yes, he is the awkward third wheel at the dinner for Klaus and Boutron.
Yeah, it's a soapy romantic. He's trying all these...
Why is he there? Is he chaperoning? Is Klaus not allowed to meet women on his own?
Perhaps that's a legal requirement. You wouldn't be surprised.
Apparently Klaus was renamed from Faust because there was a real magician called Faust who might sue them.
Okay.
So they changed it to something that kind of sounded similar.
Fair enough, yeah. He's portrayed as being a bit of a creepy, borderline sex pest.
Yeah, so fair enough. Francesca mentions that Headley painted her. Before
that, we find out that she is to play a part in one of the illusions that Friday, the Iron Maiden. So she's going to now, she's been given a part by Klaus.
He's ditched the girl he was abusing in the dressing room.
Correct.
And he is bringing her in to fill that role.
Jonathan is not entirely convinced there's going to be a TV crew there for this this particular performance, and things could go wrong.
Is this the VHS recording?
Yeah, it must be. What happens next?
Yes, the painting gets mentioned.
Uh-huh.
And she reveals it's in the cellar.
Mm-hmm.
So Klaus insists on going to see it. She's reluctant.
Yeah, she's not entirely keen, but the three of them traipse down there. What do they discover?
It's been shot up.
Around the chest area, bullet holes, and lots of them.
Yes, so Klaus whisks Francesca away while Jonathan has a wee look around, spots an elastic band or two.
Another elastic band, yes. Adam Klaus was played by Anthony Head. Born in 1954, he starred in Yonderland, Guilt, Dominion, Merlin, Little Britain, The Monarch of the Glen, New Tricks, Woof, Howard's Way. But I'm sure you can tell me what his most famous role is.
Yeah, Buffy.
Yeah, didn't watch the show, but obviously know who he is. Who did he play?
He played Giles the Watcher / librarian. He left this role, I believe, to go to Buffy. He was good in Merlin as well. He played Uther, Arthur's father. I like that.
Didn't watch it either. So worldwide, most famous for his role in Buffy. However, I would suggest that most people in the UK will know him from the will they won't they romantic goings on in the Gold Blend coffee advert.
Yeah, and I believe it was another brand in America, but it was the same advert. A different brand of instant coffee.
Really?
I think so.
How would that work?
Well, I think it's maybe the same, like a Unilever type company, but they sell it under a different brand in America.
Fair enough. But yeah, that advert was huge in the UK. It was almost like a soap opera. People were waiting for the next instalment to see what would happen.
Well, of course, these were the days before you could record everything on your satellite box
and just skip by
You had to watch what was on, and you had to watch the adverts when they came on.
Yeah.
So things like Coronation Street got 15 million viewers or whatever, and everyone watched the ads in the middle.
Change days.
Yeah, unless it's the Super Bowl. That's the only time people watch ads now.
Yeah. So Klaus whisks Francesca away to safety in his car.
Back to his house.
Yeah. He's quite enjoying it, isn't he?
He leaves Jonathan behind, just on his own.
Yeah, he takes a taxi to Mattie's place, but is disappointed. Why?
He sees her horse playing with Trevor outside the house.
Good spirits, perhaps a bit of drink involved.
Yeah, so he heads to Victoria Station instead.
That's another sign that he likes her. He's obviously saddened by this. So,
well, yeah, also because it's disproved one of his assumptions.
Yeah. We're back at the gallery.
Yes, the Shale exhibition.
And Madeline finds Katrina staring at a nude painting of herself.
With no clown face.
No. And Madeline admits who she is, what she does, why she's there, why she came round to the house.
Yeah, well, Katrina's sussed that she's not what she said.
Yeah, she's no dope. She admits to a relationship with Shale, and she really seemed to love him. And apparently that was reciprocated.
She must be the one that's into the sea lions.
Yeah.
Did you see in the background there's a large painting and a small version of a very similar painting?
No.
Apparently there was, but the commentary suggests that the large one wasn't ever actually painted, it was all computer generated.
Okay.
I assume computer generated didn't put on the wall rather than added to the film, because that would be ahead of the time.
Katrina admits that she didn't know about Francesca, and when she found out, it hit her pretty hard.
I think Maddie's spidey sense is tingling at this point.
Mm-hmm. Katrina leaves, but she has some words of encouragement for Madeline.
What does she say?
She tells her to keep meddling.
There you go.
I don't think she needs any encouragement.
None at all.
Whilst we're here, Katrina Topless was played by Jane Hazelgrove. She was born in 1968, spent 20 years on Casualty. Also in The Level, Holby City, Doctors, The Bill, Heartbeat, Silent Witness and Coronation Street. She liked her hospital dramas, didn't she?
Seems so. All the mainstays of British 90s television there, isn't it?
Yeah. From the gallery, we head back to Jonathan's windmill. He's having a lonely a sad sack TV dinner, watching Mr. Bean.
There's a dig in Mr. Bean in this scene, and in the commentary, David Rennick points out that Richard Curtis raised this with him on more than one occasion.
Mr. Bean, played by Rowan Atkinson, the star of Blackadder. Next week we'll be launching our Blackadder podcast, so please subscribe, download, enjoy.
Yeah, after you've subscribed to this one, obviously. The phone goes.
Who is it?
Maddie.
Yes, their conversation quickly moves from the case to something more personal.
Yeah.
Plot thickens. Guess who I ran into at the gallery? Katrina the cleaner, who it turns out was also sharing the sack with Mr. Shale.
I tell you, if the guy had stamina, that's 2 models he was knocking off.
Oh, and what's all this I hear about mutilated portraits in the cellar? I was down the Nick today.
Your friend, Mr. Klaus, has been demanding police protection for his new assistant.
Like he thinks she might be next on the killer's hit list. Suppose he could have a
Point, what do you reckon?
Why did you lie to me?
What?
Why did you say you lived alone?
I didn't say I lived alone.
That was one of your clever deductions.
But you didn't bother to correct me.
I beg your pardon?
You wanted my help, and you knew the best way to get it was to make me think you were single and unattached.
I'm sorry. What am I being accused of here?
That I led you on with inducements of sexual favours.
Oh no, you made that very clear right up front, that you had no interest in me whatsoever.
So how did I deceive you?
By telling me, categorically, that you weren't interested in me in such a way that implied you were interested in me.
I don't have to listen to this.
Once in a while, it wouldn't hurt you to stop putting on an act and be yourself.
Oh, really? And it wouldn't hurt you once in a while not to be so infuriatingly, self-righteously bloody honest.
Hello?
You can't begin to imagine the fetid quagmire that passes for my love life. It has no stability of any kind. All right. Say I was enjoying your company. Well, stranger things have happened.
I think we've got an example there of Jonathan being too smart for his own good. He's trying to think too many steps ahead.
No, I disagree.
Okay.
Because after she's pulled the phone out the wall there, she's essentially admitting she did enjoy his company and was wanting to spend time with him.
Yes, but what I mean is that he has tried to double think her response, but she didn't say that she was single. But he's trying to read her and being too smart in his deductions and
going round in circles.
Yeah.
After she's pulled the phone out the wall and starts going about the fetid quagmire of her love life, we see the erstwhile Trevor pop in, grab a couple of pillows and head to the couch.
In the bad books.
Presumably not because of what he's just heard, presumably because they've had a falling out.
So Jonathan returns to his dinner and appears to have an epiphany at this point whilst considering something that he has just done.
Well, he drops the remote control on the floor and has to use his foot to turn the TV off because he can't stand any more Mr. Bean. And using his foot to turn off the telly makes him think.
Okay. Over to the theatre and the changing room. As Klaus chastises the security guard for leaving Francesca's room for a moment to use the bathroom, we hear a scream.
Yes.
And they run to discover what?
She has put on £3.
£3.
She's never going to fit in her outfit. It's a disaster.
So Jonathan is tasked with babysitting her. And as she goes for a shower, he answers the phone. Who is calling?
It's Serena.
What does she want?
She wants to put personal issues to one side and buy Francesca's story for her magazine.
Yeah.
That's weird.
She also informs him that she is coming to the show, and as she puts down the receiver, we see that she has a copy of Madeline's last book with a photograph on it, so she's ID'd her for what she is.
Absolutely.
The game is up.
Seems to be.
We're down at the stage now. What's happening?
Well, in the backstage area, Jonathan's on a payphone, presumably phoning Maddie, asking her to get in touch with him at the theatre. He doesn't say it explicitly, but he drops his money, and as he bends down to pick it up, she's standing there. And they kind of patch things up.
Yeah. I think they both realise that, there's maybe a little bit to blame each.
I think, yeah, and it's almost like one of those things that you would do with a friend where you don't need to say everything, but you understand that each other are a bit sorry and let's just leave it.
Yeah, no grudges will be held.
Exactly.
He then admits that he thinks he's fathomed the case, but that it is more calculated and evil than they had imagined.
Dun, dun, dun.
Sinister.
Yeah.
Before the show starts, Francesca complains that the scales from her changing room have been stolen.
Klaus doesn't care. We also see Serena arrive.
Yes. And we then see them perform the act. And we are, as an audience, perhaps fooled into thinking that perhaps something has went wrong. Has Serena sabotaged the show? Because it looks as if Francesca might have actually died in this.
Well, the ante is upped, and you get these sort of sinister shots, close-ups of Serena.
You see Jonathan looking a bit concerned.
There's blood runs down the back of the case.
Yeah.
And there's chaotic music.
But no.
Klaus is there. Apparently, there was a line cut from the show after this where Jonathan berates Klaus for his sensationalism. Back in the dressing room.
Yes, it's the big showdown.
This always baffles me.
What?
Why the police let these civilians come in and explain how they solved the case.
Only Jessica Fletcher should be given that privilege.
Yes, I mean, I think I talked to you off mic not that long ago about, I think it's the movie Fractured?
Mm-hmm. Fractured, the movie, the Anthony Hopkins and Ryan Gosling movie.
Yes, the same thing happens at the end of that. The protagonist gets to go in and tell the bad guy how he cracked the case.
A bit of artistic license, please, Ian.
Whilst guns are being waved around and anyone can be murdered at any moment.
Francesca and Selena are chatting with each other when Jonathan and Maddie enter, and Serena acknowledges that they've met before.
Yeah, and they don't take much time to go over that. They reveal that Griswold has been released due to new evidence that they provided.
Yes. Francesca then confirms that she went to Shale's house around 9:10 in the morning of the murder, and Serena says that the postman normally arrived at around 8:30, and in fact, the postman can confirm this. She's seen her leave that morning. We saw that.
It was at the same time, yes.
So the question is, why was the letter that was stood upon still there, firstly when the cleaner arrived, and also still there when the police arrived later on? This, to me, is a weak clue.
It's kind of flimsy.
Shale is answering the door to a hot young model who he is about to spend 2 hours with in the sack.
In this version of the story.
Jonathan thinks that the fact that he went down to answer the door to her means that he would have noticed this letter from HMRC, the Inland Revenue, and picked it up to read it.
Or moved it at least.
I don't think so. I think a hot young blonde is enough to distract this Lothario. I don't think that the creative types are known to be the best bookkeepers and, the most efficient at looking after their finances. That's not something that I would assume they would have done. So, going down to answer the door to your young blonde lover, I think is more than enough distraction for you to say, do you know what? I'll deal with that letter. I'll pick it up sometime.
The cleaner's coming in shortly.
Yeah.
She can get it.
So to me, it's in no way suspicious.
Fair enough.
Do you agree? Would you have picked that letter up in that circumstance?
I hate the mail line, and I would have put it on a table or kicked it to the side.
If you're answering, but the whole point is there's a hot blonde at the door for you. You'd have still thought to yourself, oh, better move. I hate a mess. Oh, bet she's in for an excellent time with you. Did you fold your socks?
Oh.
Anyway, I can't stand. I hate mail lying around. Yeah, that's fine, but not when you're answering the door to her. Excuse me while I just brush my teeth and put my underpants in the chest over there.
It's not quite the same, is it?
Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, if you've not got a clip or something that we can move on with.
No, so the next question is, who would want him dead if not the burglar, and why?
Yes.
They suggest revenge for sleeping with another woman.
Yes, and that makes Serena the prime suspect.
It does. Francesca looks at the obvious suspect in Serena, but no.
At this point, Maddie identifies Francesca as the killer.
What was the motive here?
Well, it's a twin motive, so to speak. Firstly, she was jealous or resentful that he would not participate in some kind of affair with her and instead was sleeping with the cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, she thought as a victim of this type of attack, or being perceived as a victim of this sort of attack, she could become famous and tell her story.
So it appears that this Headley Shale character was not quite as superficial as we're led to believe. He was attracted to the cleaner as opposed to the model.
Brave man who could obviously face having his jaw vacuumed.
So yeah, Francesca couldn't stand being spurned. Okay, so here's the thing. Had he accepted her advances, was her plan always to kill him and tell her story? Or would she have been happy to live off his wealth and fame?
Well, maybe she thinks he would have left his wife for her or something.
Yeah.
It's implied that he's extraordinarily wealthy.
So in that case then, the whole thing about the inland revenue isn't such a big deal.
If he's so wealthy.
Yeah. Although, of course, plenty of wealthy people have had their downfalls been the taxman.
Perhaps it was written by somebody who would never ignore a letter from the Inland Revenue.
Yeah. So Jonathan then goes on to explain exactly how she set up the fake burglary and bound herself.
Well, obviously she's outraged at this suggestion and says it's impossible.
Yeah. Well, okay, so the first part, describe that. How did she set up the fake burglary? What did she do?
Well, she takes the jewellery, puts it in a pouch and lobs it out the window.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
She ruffles up the bed, ransacks the place,
this is another
bounds
reference
herself.
to a wrestler. She makes it like there's been a wrestling match on the bed.
Sure, okay.
And then she tapes herself up.
She does.
Eye holes in the tape for her eyes.
She uses the bedpost to wrap the tape around her wrists and bind her feet, etc. But she is quite indignant. She's still not going to give herself up here.
No, there's no fingerprint.
Well, she says, if I bound myself up like you're suggesting I did, how could I have shot the gun?
It's a good point.
There is, however, an answer.
This is crazy. I've just bound and gagged myself. How did I shoot him?
Well, that was always the real stumper. Those prints on the gun, which apparently belonged to no one who'd been in the house that day. We were wrong, weren't we? They belonged to you, Francesca.
If you checked your facts, my fingerprints were eliminated with everyone else's. Ask the police.
No one said there were fingerprints. Not the first thing that's going to occur to anyone. You'd fire the gun with your foot. But you'd already had plenty of target practice. With the painting in the cellar, the one you didn't want us to see. So when Headley walked in, you weren't going to miss. Worthy of Houdini. The way you got that elastic band on and off your foot. Again, you'd had bags of practice.
Possibly expect the police to believe this.
Not without hard proof, obviously. Which is why this afternoon, Jonathan had me pop some bathroom scales down to the CID to eliminate your toe prints from their inquiries.
The writer indicates that there's something that doesn't work in this explanation, but will not reveal what it is. Do you have an idea?
No, we alluded to it earlier. The thing that doesn't work for me is there's no mention of how she came across a gun, a handgun.
Well, I think that's a big point, isn't it?
Yeah. So she's some model.
Yeah.
It's not that easy to get hold of a gun. Certainly not that easy to get hold of a gun without the person that you're buying it from as well, knowing who you know, she's not part of the underworld as far as we're aware.
There's no indication of that in the story.
No.
It's just a magic gun.
Yeah. Where did she get this gun from? That should have been discussed or described.
You would think.
Yeah.
But magic of television, she has a gun.
She does. I'd have preferred an explanation to that.
Yeah. Serena, I think, is both angry and sort of vindicated in a way, pointing out to Francesca that she was nothing to Headley.
Yeah, we see a touch of the sociopath here. We see her true colours. What happens?
She says she'll never be nothing again. And the price of her story has doubled.
Yeah. So there's an arrogance there. You see her sort of stand up. The evil comes out.
Yeah, absolutely.
From there, we head over to a hotel room for perhaps like the epilogue this week.
There's sort of a brief scene outside the theatre where Jonathan and Maddie part on good terms but don't leave together. And then suddenly they're back together in this hotel room.
Yeah, I think that's showing that their initial reaction is to say, no, we're not going to liaise anymore, but something's drawn them together.
Yeah, they've got more to talk about.
They have. They both want it. So, yeah, they don't like to admit it immediately, but...
Yeah. While they're in the hotel room, I think he kind of misses his opportunity to make a move.
Yes, there's a few moments where it looks like certainly Maddie would be keen to progress things.
At least amenable. But he either misses them or chooses not to act. And she leaves, thinking that the coffee they've ordered is not coming.
Well, before then, he offers an explanation as to how he... Because she's quite impressed how he got to that conclusion.
Right.
And he explains that after seeing Francesca's toes when he turned up at her place, and then him turning off Mr. Bean with his foot, led him to put a few things together and things became clearer.
So it's not just his genius, it's also luck.
I think that's always the case. Sometimes you need something to trigger something else.
Yeah, absolutely. He tells her that if she ever wants any help again, don't ring her, not to ring him whatever he does.
It's clearly a joke. He clearly means the opposite of that.
You think?
I think so, yes. I don't think that's... You wouldn't, if it was true, you wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't say, if you ever need the help, don't ever come... You wouldn't say...
I suppose he's maybe thinking that this might not come up again, and he's just kind of having a joke, implying that he enjoyed doing this.
What I would suggest is this. This is just after you've solved a seemingly impossible crime. You must be in such a high. Like you're buzzing from it. I think both of them were up for... Right now, I mean, maybe that would dissipate over time, but that night, you must think to yourself, we're this is good. We're a dynamic duo here.
She promises anyway not to bother him again, and she leaves.
Mm-hmm. And we can see him, he's obviously disappointed at that.
Yeah, but then there's soaring music, chap on the door, and the credits roll.
And if you stayed to the end of the credits, what would you have discovered?
That when he opens the door, it's a guy with coffee. It's the room
waiter.
service.
Yeah. The first episode. Overall thoughts?
I thought it was a great introduction to the characters. I thought it was a fun wee mystery. Promising.
Yeah, I think if you'd watched this with high hopes, you would not have been disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, I think the writer and the director agree that it's maybe not the most demanding of mysteries, but that's maybe a good thing for an introductory episode. Get folk hooked.
You want to be able to focus on the characters.
A gateway mystery.
Yes. Things will get more complex, but it's more about establishing who these people are, how they operate together.
Absolutely. Not
just the characters, but the locations, the lifestyles.
Yeah, absolutely. And the roles almost, yeah.
Okay. Unless you've got anything else you want to say about this week's episode, why don't we...
What about Francesca? We haven't talked about her.
Ah, good point. I think we've missed her. Francesca was played by Saskia Mulder. She was born in 1973. She has starred in The Descent, Parts 1 and 2, Evelyn, Coupling, The Book Group, and she is the sister of the 90s supermodel Karen Mulder.
I know that they went to Paris to audition for that role.
Yeah.
And it was mentioned on the DVD. The director, I think, looked at 30 model actresses and chose Saskia Mulder for the role. Well, she did a good job anyway, so...
Yeah, I thought she did. In terms of production information, this was first broadcast, I think I mentioned at the top of the podcast, actually.
Well, it's the anniversary, isn't it?
Yeah, the 10th of May 1997. It was directed by Marcus Mortimer. This is his first of 3 Jonathan Creek episodes. He has also been involved with The Two Ronnies, Peter Kay, Live at the Top of the Tower. Have you seen that one?
I'm not a huge Peter Kay fan, I have to say.
Ben Elton Live, The New Statesman.
It's one that I've seen clips of and never really sat down to watch the whole thing.
Bit before your time, perhaps?
Probably. Was that the Rick Mayall one?
Yes.
Alan Bastard.
Alan Bastard. In fact, you would like it. I mean, you've got an interest in politics and the machinations.
Yeah.
It's worth a... In fact, that could be a future podcast.
Put it on the back burner for now.
He has also worked on the Mary Whitehouse Experience, Alexei Sale stuff, Roland Rat, Victoria Wood, and Jim Will Fix It.
Less said about that, the better. But
I think so.
Some of those, from my recollection, sound that they might have crossed over with the writer. So perhaps there's a connection from there.
Yeah.
Working past.
David Rennick, or is it... How are we pronouncing this? Is it Renwick or Rennick?
I would say Rennick.
Let's go with Rennick then. he wrote every episode. He's a creator and writer. But I think we shall leave him, as well as Alan Davies and Caroline Quentin, we'll leave discussing them and their background until another date, I think.
For a shorter episode.
Perhaps. Okay, you've dropped in quite a lot of trivia throughout the episode there. Ian, the only thing I have to add is that apparently, if you remember Madeline snooping around in Shale's bedroom when Jonathan was downstairs being vacuumed.
Yes.
She was going through a wardrobe.
Yes.
Apparently that was painted to look like a TARDIS.
Because it's Colin Baker's bedroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, clever.
What I think we'll do now, Ian, we did this with Columbo. How about an episode review?
I think it's a good idea.
I'll remind you what an episode review is.
Okay.
We shall look at the motive, the alibi, the clues, and the gotcha.
Okay.
See what we think of them individually. Let's start with motive.
Revenge, fame and fortune. Not necessarily in that order.
Okay, the alibi.
She was tied up on the floor.
Yeah, a co-victim and witness to the crime. She was bound and gagged. So, strong alibi.
I would say so.
Clues.
Okay, the big ones... There were some red herrings, obviously.
Yeah, we won't go with red herrings, we'll go with actual clues.
With actual clues, okay.
I'll start you off with the rubber bands.
The painting that was shot up.
Yep, her long toes.
Yep, and...
Jonathan using his foot was a clue, it was a...
Yep, the letter.
And the fact that Katrina was his lover.
Yeah, well, I think that revelation of the painting and the relationship between Headley and Katrina was important as well.
With regards to the rubber band clues, Maddie removing it from the scene of the crime is a bit risky.
Well, yeah, it's no longer there to prove. Fortunately, they've got the toe prints on the gun that places her definitively at the scene.
Well, let's move on to the gotcha. So that's the scales and the toe prints. Pretty good, yeah.
Pretty cast iron, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm trying to think how you could explain that. I suppose it was his gun, you stood on it with your bare feet.
She maybe tried to move it with her feet after it had been dropped.
Yes, but we did see she put her shoes back on.
That was stupid.
Very stupid. No, I think that's, yeah, as you say, pretty cast iron.
And I think it's safe to say, in case folk are wondering, toe prints are as unique as fingerprints. There is an element of doubt insofar as fingerprints are no longer considered to be foolproof. But yeah, they're good, given they narrow it down.
So pretty solid with regards to those elements, I think.
Yeah, I would agree.
Our next Jonathan Creek episode will be Jack in the Box.
Obviously, if you're a podcast junkie and you can't wait that long, in the intervening week, we've got our other new project up and running, the Blackadder podcast. It'll debut next week. We should ask folk, it's an important thing, and I know it can be a pain. At the start of a new podcast, it's very important to get it in front of as many people as possible, and the way that you can help us do that, to get more folk listening and therefore discussing and getting involved with the show, is to subscribe, rate and review the show on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, they like us to call it now. Even if that's not how you listen to the podcast, it makes a big difference to...
Yeah, I mean, also rate, review, subscribe in your usual places.
If you can only be bothered doing one, do it on iTunes or the Apple Podcasts app.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's us.
Yeah. So we'll say cheerio.
Bye-bye.
This is going to sound phony, but what the hell? You have been tonight the warmest, most appreciative audience I've ever played to. It's been an absolute joy, and I thank you. Good night.
Applause, 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 and music.